Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and last weekend I traveled to Seattle for WorldCon, the World Science Fiction Convention and host of the Hugo Awards. And this got me thinking, what are my favorite sci-fi books that have won the Hugo Award? I have read about half of them. I've read 36 Hugo winners, so I'm making my way through them. It might take a while to finish them all because some of them are kind of fantasy and I'm not super interested in reading them, but we will get there eventually, and so today I'm going to be going through the 36 that I have read, and I'm going to be tier ranking all of them. So at the end of the video, I might share a few stories from WorldCon as well, but let's get into the books. I did put these in order, and then Tier Maker decided to say, no, you didn't. Well, let's see. We're going to start off with a retro Hugo, actually. There's two retro Hugo Award winners on this list. The Mule. This is the first story in Foundation and Empire, for those of you that are familiar. I'm going to put it in B tier. I know some of you might like it higher because the Mule is probably the best character in the series. Definitely a highlight in Foundation, but outside of that character, some of the other storylines I didn't find as interesting. So I did like the Mule. This is not going to be towards the top of my list, although I am a Foundation fan. All right, next up we have The Demolished Man by Alfred Bester. I am going to put this one in B tier as well. It's an interesting detective story. We have psychics. It's like, how do you commit a crime in a world where, you know, the police know what you're going to do, potentially, even before you do it. The problem for me was we get two perspectives, and one of the characters is just way more interesting than the other character, but it does some interesting things with formatting to represent psychic communication, and I really like the ending. So The Demolished Man, I didn't like it as much as The Star's My Destination, but still a pretty solid winner. Next up, we have another retro winner. This one is Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. I'm going to put this one in A tier. I like this book a lot. It's one of the classics of the dystopian genre. There's maybe one or two that I like a touch more, which is why maybe I haven't quite given it S tier, but I love the prose. I think it's very a prescient book, unfortunately. Still relevant today, but there's a lot that we can read and take from that book. And don't burn books, read them. That's kind of what the channel is all about, reading sci-fi books. All right, up next we have A Case of Conscience by James Blish. C tier. So the problem for me with this book was I read it and it was told in two parts, and I quite liked the first part. It was kind of some interesting themes and characters. And then the second part just didn't really deliver on what was set up in the first part. It goes in a new direction and it tries to tie things together at the end, but it felt a little too late for me. And I looked it up, and as I sort of suspected, this was two novellas stitched together, or essentially one novella that was then expanded into a book. And I liked the first part, but the second part didn't really work for me. All right, after that we have Starship Troopers by Robert A. Heinlein. C tier as well. Heinlein, I'm just not sure I really vibe with his writing style. This book was influential, some interesting military sci-fi aspects, and it is quite thought-provoking, but I just didn't really quite vibe with it. Yeah, it's just not really my kind of thing, and you know what? That's okay. All right, up next, A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr. I'm going to put this in C tier as well. This is a strange book. This is not really what I expected it to be. It's a post-apocalyptic story, but it doesn't feel epic. It doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of stakes. It's just kind of a lot of talking. It's a lot of like history and theology and, kind of putting together the pieces of the past. And while I did quite like the first part, the story is told in three parts. I'm surprisingly humorous as well. I just sort of lost interest as the book went on, and I felt like, some of the characters just kind of getting up on their soapbox and giving their opinions on things just didn't really grab my attention the way I know this does with some other people. I know other people connect and vibe with this book. The philosophy, they do find it interesting, intellectually stimulating. So if you're one of those people, I'm glad you enjoyed it. All right, up next, Waystation by Clifford D. Simak. S tier. We got an S tier book. Waystation. I'm a big Simak fan, and Waystation is my favorite from him. We have our seemingly ageless recluse that is the keeper of a waystation, and we get to interact with some interesting aliens, tackle some really big themes to do with war and technology and communication. And yeah, this book really just spoke to me. I liked Simak's writing style. It's vivid but not overly dense, and yeah, I just sort of like connected with the way he portrayed this future setting, and the things that he wanted to say. They resonated with me. All right, up next, going on to Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny. I'm going to put this in C tier as well. It's a tricky read, this one. It's a little bit confusing. It feels more fantasy than science fiction, but it's just because it's so far in the future, this technology feels like magic. I think this is something that I might enjoy more on a reread because, you know, I think I'd be able to sort of peel back some of those layers and maybe find some more juice in my onion, get some more onion juice out of out of the book. But as it was, just didn't quite hit for me. Very clever though, very clever book. Zelazny, a talented writer. Just didn't get that big payoff that I wanted. The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick. I'm putting this in B tier. I am a big PKD fan. I've read 12 of his books. The Man in the High Castle was the first one, the first of 12. So maybe I need to go back. This might be another one that I need to reread, because another one that isn't really what you expect based on the premise. It's this alternate future where the Axis powers defeated the Allied forces in World War II. And that's a pretty cool premise, but it's sort of kind of not really exactly about that. It's more about reality, and I think with more PKD books under my belt, I would have been able to make a little bit more sense of what he was trying to do with the book. At the end of it, I was just kind of like, I was waiting for like the penny to drop, and I was still waiting, but maybe on a reread, that penny will finally hit the floor. All right. Philip Jose Farmer's To Your Scattered Bodies Go, A tier. I really enjoyed this. It's kind of this fun, trippy world. Character wakes up on this next to this river, next to a bunch of other people that are all naked, and they're throughout time and history. They're all from different periods in history, and they kind of form these little cliques, and they band together. Friendships form, rivalries form as they try to make do with the resources that they have and find out, how did they get here? What is this river world that they are on? All right, Rendezvous with Rama. I'm going to put this in A tier as well. Arthur C. Clarke, another one of my all-time favorite writers. Rama's not my favorite from Clarke, but it is one that I really enjoy. The mystery of the big dumb object, the science is pretty cool in this one. I'm looking forward to the film adaptation. I think visually this film has the potential to be amazing. And the ending of this one, initially I felt was a little anticlimactic, but over time it's really stayed with me. It's kind of very thought-provoking, really makes you sort of question your place in the universe. And I think Clarke pulled off what he was trying to do with Rendezvous with Rama. Another big name, a big hitter here, we've got Dune by Frank Herbert. I'm putting this in A tier. I know Dune, it's the sci-fi book of all sci-fi books, and I am calling it a sci-fi book. We cannot let the fantasy people steal Dune from us. For me, though, it's A tier. I just found some parts a little slow, a little dry, and I think Herbert's a great dialogue writer. I really liked the discussions, sort of like the political machinations, the themes, the philosophy, but I just didn't super connect with the characters. I actually found Jessica more interesting than Paul in Dune, and I just wanted a little bit more movement. But I did enjoy the book. I read all 6 of the Frank Herbert books and really enjoyed the first 4. All right, up next, Startide Rising by David Brin, C tier. Too much dolphin poetry. So much dolphin singing going on in this book. And I'm only half joking when I say that. Really cool ideas to do with uplifting. You know, it's a space opera where species can only be uplifted, sort of like gain consciousness, develop their intelligence if they are uplifted by another species, which kind of leaves this sort of like never-ending thread for you to unravel, like backwards through time, and also moral questions to do with should you uplift other species and the ramifications of that. So pretty interesting ideas. Just never really got into the story at all. I just kind of bounced off this one, unfortunately. Neuromancer. Ooh, I have a tricky relationship with Neuromancer, but I'm going to put it in A. Neuromancer is one that initially I found a little difficult. I read it quite early on in my sci-fi reading career. Career sounds a little too grand. Like what are you, the LeBron James of sci-fi? My reading history, that sounds a little more grounded. And I think because it's quite a tricky book, doesn't really hold your hand with the world building, quite complex. Now that I've read quite a lot of cyberpunk, a lot of it influenced by Neuromancer, I think I'd be able to pick this one up and understand things a little bit faster than I did the first time around. But it's definitely one that I respect, appreciate. It's massively influential and just a really cool vibe. You know, if you're someone that doesn't need to understand everything, and you're just like a vibey cyberpunk book, Neuromancer's gonna deliver. All right, Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card. The sequel to Ender's Game, I liked it. Not what I expected after Ender's Game, but I liked it. A little slower, a little more methodical, a little more philosophical. And while I don't think it quite had the I don't think I formed the same connections to the characters. I wasn't as invested in the plot. I think there's a lot to unpack here. It is a thinky book, and one that, yeah, I think deserves to be an A tier. Now, this one might shock you guys. Hyperion. I'm gonna put it in A tier. Hyperion might be my favorite series of all time, but I am famous/infamously more of a Fall of Hyperion guy. So Fall of Hyperion would be S tier, Hyperion A tier. I wanted more plot progression in the present timeline. I liked the tales. The tales were interesting, but you know, what does that all lead to? Well, you don't really get the payoff until Fall of Hyperion. So if I was judging them as a duology, I'd put them in S tier. But if I had to pick one of the two, Fall's going S tier. And I know I'm on an island with that opinion. So please, any Fall supporters out there, please get my back in the comments. I need your help. All right, Isaac Asimov again. The Gods Themselves. I'm putting this in C tier. I don't understand why when people talk about Asimov outside of the Robot and the Foundation series, the number one standalone they recommend is The Gods Themselves. It's my least favorite Asimov book that I've read. They should be recommending The End of Eternity. That's the best Asimov book that I've read. I'm a big End of Eternity guy. The Gods Themselves. Felt like Asimov was just trying to be too clever by half with this one. It felt like he was trying to win a Hugo. And I mean, credit to Asimov, he did win the Hugo. But I didn't enjoy reading it as much. Go read The End of Eternity. Possibly the best time travel book ever. All right, The Windup Girl, Paolo Bacigalupi. I'm putting this in B tier. Kind of a biopunk, cyberpunk, dystopian future. Some of the science is pretty interesting. The world building is pretty interesting. It's a kind of grimy, dirty, like unpleasant place to be. And you do sort of care about some of the characters, but I don't know, the interconnections never quite came together in a way that was super satisfying to me. It was more like interesting than enjoyable. B tier for The Wind-Up Girl. All right, next up we have The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. I'm going to put this in C tier. It felt just a little too academic, a little too dry, just people talking about the philosophies, the differences between these, you know, two societies. And I feel like that's a great setup for something to happen. Not a lot actually happens. So depends on what type of book you're interested in. If you want something that's very thinky, very thematic, and you don't really need a lot more, and Ursula K. Le Guin does have beautiful prose. She's an excellent writer. It might hit a little bit harder for you than it did for me. Not my favorite Le Guin book. All right, up next, China Mieville, The City in the City. C tier. This one's only kind of sci-fi. It's kind of sci-fi, kind of fantasy. Detective story. There's these two cities, sort of a weird connection between them. And I kind of like the setup. I like the premise. But the more it went on, I was just like, this is not really sci-fi. This is not really my vibe. A lot of details seem to focus on like really silly things to do with like websites and floppy disks, or I can't even remember the specific examples, but I felt like the technology dated so quickly. I think this came out in 2010, and almost instantly it sort of felt out of date. So not really what I look for in my science fiction, but I know a lot of people like this one, so maybe give it a try. Fire Upon the Deep. I'm going to put this one in B tier. I love the Zones of Thought. I think it's a really interesting world. There's some cool technology. I think Vinji's a solid writer. The story and the characters just didn't quite hook me in the way my favorite space operas do. I wasn't as invested in the outcome of the story as I am with a lot of space opera. And it has some pretty cool aliens. A lot of people say this book has their favorite aliens of all time. I'd say top 20. I'll give you top 20, but I don't know. I can't go top 10. There's a lot of good aliens out there that I like even more. I'm sorry, but Upon the Deep, yeah, it's pretty good. All right, Gateway by Frederick Pohl. I'm also going to put this B tier. We have alien artifacts. We've got a good mystery. The character examination here. This is new wave sci-fi, and he talks to an AI therapist. Kind of sci-fi Tony Soprano a little bit in a way. And I thought it uncovered some interesting things to do with this character. And in some ways, I feel like it was a bit dated, but in other aspects, it was ahead of its time. It's a book that I respect. Does some interesting things with the main characters. And if you like an alien mystery, ooh, the Heechee are pretty mysterious. The Snow Queen by Joan Vinci. Couple of Vingies represented at the Hugos. I'm putting this in B tier. Beautiful cover, by the way. Well, that was one of my favorite sci-fi covers of all time. Michael Whelan is the artist, I think. Just phenomenal. Anyway, the book itself, I think it has a cool premise. I like this sci-fi take on the Snow Queen. It felt like these hand motions that I think are slightly off screen are trying to represent the fact that I just wanted a little bit more. Give me a little bit more. You're teasing me and then just not really delivering in a way that's hard hitting. But beautiful writing, cool story. Just didn't quite reach that next level for me in terms of the plot development and the sci-fi ideas. Ender's Game. Before Speaker for the Dead and above Speaker for the Dead for me. These books are so different. Sci-fi readers tend to be one or the other. I like Ender's Game. I like the pacing. I like the philosophy. I like the tactical games at Battle School with Ender and his fellow students. And what an ending. One of the best endings in all of science fiction. Ender's Game. I think one of the deserved famous classics. All right, up next we have The Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson. I'm putting this one in B tier. So this is kind of cyberpunky and is a much tougher read than Snow Crash. I've read two Neil Stephenson books now, and I know Neil Stephenson's a very smart guy. He's kind of famous for his info dumps and things like that. I did not expect this to be so sort of complex and challenging, and there's some really, really interesting tech. There's some really cool ideas. I just wish I cared a bit more about the story. It felt like a bit of a slog to get to some of those cool reveals that Stevenson drops on us. But I don't know, he's so talented, he has to go in B tier. All right, up next, Larry Niven's Ringworld. I'm putting this in B tier as well. The Ringworld itself is pretty crazy. Some of the characters are, well, sort of. I was going to say something, but I didn't know if it was going to be spoilery. So we'll just move on. I feel like Niven, I've read Ringworld and I've read The Mote in God's Eye, which he co-wrote with Jerry Pournelle. Like high highs and kind of low lows, or at least just sort of mids. Like I like the books. And I can see why people have them high on their list because of the awesome moments. But just as an overall package, Ringworld just didn't quite do it for me. Okay, moving on to Ancillary Justice. I'm going to put this in B tier as well. Some really interesting things to do with intelligence, artificial intelligence, robots. We have these ancillaries that are part of a ship. Imagine your hand. You have a hand. All right, where's my hand? I know where my hand is. But the fingers are sort of like semi-independent. Like the fingers can sort of do things independently of your hand. They're like connected, but also separate. It's kind of trippy. And I really liked some of the ideas, the AI ideas that Anlecki explored in Ancillary Justice. But there's also a lot of tea drinking, a lot of just kind of hanging out, talking. Isn't this interesting? Maybe. Maybe not as interesting as the AI stuff is. Can we get back to the revenge plot, please? So I liked it, but I can only put it in B tier. All right, up next we have Spin by Robert Charles Wilson. I'm putting this in S tier. I love Spin. I think this is one of the best books at combining character writing with sci-fi concepts. We have characters that are a little tropey, but they have depth to them. I really like we have this character that's more sciencey. We have this character that's more religious. We have this character that's kind of in between and is torn between these two perspectives, but is so close to both of these characters, and everything that's going around them is nuts. One day, just all the stars disappear. What's going on there? This is sense of wonder sci-fi. I was hooked by the plot, the ideas. I actually cared about the characters. Phenomenal book. S tier. All right, moving on. A Memory Called Empire. And we'll maybe do this as a duo. It is a duology. A Memory Called Empire and a Desolation Called Peace. I'm putting in A tier. I really enjoyed this duology. I think I slightly preferred A Memory Called Empire, but they're both great books. We've got this fish out of water type setup where a person has been sent as a representative from their station to the capital of Teixcalan, and the person before them died under mysterious circumstances. So not only do they have to learn the culture, the language, they've got to be on their toes, because who knows what kind of trouble is afoot. And the way that language and technology is weaved into the story, great character relationship dynamics in this book. Plot could have just elevated it just a little bit to S tier, but I liked a lot of things going on in this duology. Okay, up next we have the 5th season, kind of fantasy. Kind of got tricked into reading this, although it's post-apocalyptic in a way. The 5th season, I'm putting in C tier, but it's really just because it's not so much to my reading taste. It did feel more like a fantasy book. I think if I were to reread it, knowing what to expect, changing my expectations, I might get a little bit more out of it, but the way it plays, it has parts of the book that are written in second person, which is kind of interesting, and it does do some unique things in terms of character and theme, but it's just not the type of worlds, the type of concepts, the type of plot that I'm typically drawn to, and I got a little bit out of it, but I didn't get a lot out of reading this book. Okay, The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. I'm quite sad that both this and the Dispossessed won the Hugo. I'm putting this one in C tier as well. And not The Lathe of Heaven, because I love The Lathe of Heaven. I think that's a fantastic book. But both of these I kind of struggled to connect with. Interesting themes. I think it was ahead of its time, but just a little bit slow. I wanted more out of the story, more out of the characters, more out of the plot. You know, dive into that technology and sci-fi concepts a bit more. And I feel like those themes would have then hit harder when packaged with those other elements that I enjoy so much. So, not the biggest fan of that one, but check out Lathe. Lathe is great. All right, up next we have Joe Haldeman's The Forever War. I'm putting this in A tier. I think this is one of the staples of the military sci-fi genre. Very influential, does some great things to do with time dilation, and the character work is pretty interesting too. Doesn't glorify war. You kind of, this book was influenced by Haldeman's experiences in Vietnam, but it's not just a one-to-one allegory as well. There's some creative science fiction here, and I think if you're a fan of that subgenre, definitely got to read The Forever War. All right, we've got just 3 to go. Up next, we've got The Fountains of Paradise by Arthur C. Clarke. I'm going to put this in A tier as well. Another one that I really enjoyed. I think the beginning and the end are super strong, maybe loses a little bit of steam in the middle, so it's not quite on the same level as Childhood's End and 2001: A Space Odyssey for me. But still, Clarke, I think his prose is underrated, and the ideas, just the master of big idea sci-fi. Okay, the Vor Game, I talked a little bit about this one recently in the Vorkosigan saga. I'm going to put this in C tier. I don't think this was a good place to start with Vorkosigan, even though you can kind of start anywhere because they're standalone stories. I think I needed to know more about Miles, and also this is two stories that are stitched together, so it felt a little bit disjointed. So I kind of had that, I was kind of bumping up at the beginning, kind of not being familiar with the backstory, and then there was that bumpy bit where we kind of transition between those two stories as well. So don't worry, I am going to give Vorkosigan another try. Probably don't start with Vor Game. No. And finally, the 3 Body Problem. Now, if it was for the whole trilogy, it would be S tier. But I do like the sequels more than the first book, so I'm going to put the 3 Body Problem in A tier. I really like this book. I like the hard sci-fi. It doesn't really bother me that the characters are a bit dry and a bit flat because the science is crazy, the physics is crazy, the stakes are huge. This is the type of book that kind of melts your brain. You don't necessarily understand everything, but it captures your imagination, and the sequels just take it to another level and another level. So, big fan of the 3 Body Problem. I'd recommend it to pretty much all sci-fi readers, unless you hate hard sci-fi and just really are character-driven, because the characters are pretty flat. So there you go. Those are the 36 Hugo-winning novels that I have read. Pretty even split across the board. I don't know what the average of that would be. B plus probably, which makes sense. Might be about what you expect. And my personal 3 favorites of the ones I've read so far: Waystation, Ender's Game, and Spin. So let me know which of these you enjoyed, which are your favorites, and of the ones that I haven't read yet, what are your favorites? What do you recommend? What do you think I would enjoy? I recently bought a copy of Where Late the Sweet Birds Sang, so I know that's one that I'll be getting to fairly soon. Let me know which other ones I need to add to that list. So, if you're interested, a couple of quick stories from WorldCon. Friday morning, 6 a.m., get a text that my flight's cancelled. So we're off to a good start. Luckily, I'm able to get rerouted through a different airport, and I make it to Seattle. Head to the con. I've got some panels lined up. I had sort of a loose schedule. They give you the plan ahead of time, and got my little Excel spreadsheet. And one of the panels that I wanted to see had some BookTubers in it. That was one of the great aspects of the weekend, getting to meet some fellow BookTubers like John from Talking Story, Bookborn, read by Kyle, Jake Bishop, Made Between the Pages, Juan Carlos from, I think, The Accolade. I'll put that in the description. Just a bunch of really cool people. A couple of nice subscribers came up to me and said hello. So it was really great talking to you guys about sci-fi books as well. So definitely a highlight of the convention, getting to meet some people, as well as see some pretty famous authors. I got to see some great panel discussions. I'm sure I'm going to forget everybody that I saw, but Ada Palmer and Ray Naylor and a bunch of other great authors were there. And I got into a writing workshop with Stephen R. Donaldson, who I haven't read anything from yet, but a cool little coincidence. And I don't know if I can reveal the details yet, but I might be reading some Donaldson. Now, I can't tell you the plan, but that was a little fortuitous coincidence that I did get to learn a little bit about writing from Donaldson himself. So pretty cool opportunity there. Oh, the one thing that I forgot, Museum of Pop Culture I went to in Seattle as well, and they had that's where they have the SFF Hall of Fame, as well as sci-fi, horror, and fantasy exhibits. So I might throw up a couple of pictures of the cool props and costumes and things that they had. So if you're in Seattle and you're a sci-fi fan, the Museum of Pop Culture, MoPop, I think it is worth checking out. And I'm trying to think if anything else interesting happened. On the Sunday, I played golf. Went to Chambers Bay, where they had the 2015 US Open. Did I beat Jordan Spieth's winning score? No, I didn't. But I did birdie at the 18th hole, so I had a great time indeed. So there you go, guys. WorldCon, it was a lot of fun. It was in Seattle this year. It's going to be in Los Angeles next year. So I'm almost definitely going to be going. Let me know if you plan on going. Maybe we'll I'll get to meet some more booktubers and some more sci-fi readers. And hey, that's what we like to do. Chat about books. That's why the channel exists. That's why we go to these cons. Just because we love sci-fi stories. We love sci-fi ideas. I feel like I'm losing my voice a little bit. I don't know if that was from the convention or just getting riled up throughout the duration of this video. Anyway, there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little rambly, a little different from some of the typical sci-fi content that I make, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, smash, really just pummel that subscribe button or a light tap. They both do the same thing. Lightly tap the subscribe button, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima, A New Eden, Half Ogre, Zakawe, Samil, and the award-winning column. And you can find more sci-fi content. Nope. That didn't really work either. Over on the screen somewhere.